Hi, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of the Spider Sense podcast. I am your host, Jennifer, at Jen's Peculiar Exotics. And my guest today is Liz at Liz Invertebrates. Hi, Liz. How are you
Hi.
today?
Hi, doing good. How are you?
I'm good. A little nervous this
Mm.
morning.
I first want to say congratulations on your podcast.
Thank you.
This
I
is
know we
so
were talking
exciting.
about it. We were talking about it last summer when we were at Tarantula Fest. So
Yeah.
it's a real dream come true for us to actually be doing this today. So it's very special, and I'm really honored to have you on the podcast today. Because actually, I only have like a year and a half experience with tarantulas, but Liz has years of experience with tarantulas. So, Liz, would you mind telling us a little bit about how you got into the hobby?
So I joined the hobby in August of 2020. And it wasn't because we're in the pandemic and we couldn't go out much or anything like that. I've always been curious about spiders and just how they live, but I've also had a deep fear for them. So I thought, what a better time to jump in and educate myself and just go on in and buy my first tarantula after doing lots and lots of research, of course.
Same here, same here. I did about 3 to 4 months of research before I even dared to get my first tarantula. I had to make
Yeah,
sure I knew everything and I was ready.
same. I'm like, I have to know the ins and outs before I jump completely in.
Right, right. Which, to anybody that's getting into tarantulas, that's the best way to do it is do your research, way beyond before you even get your first tarantula because there's so many different species. There's old worlds, there's new worlds. Tarantulas are from like all around the world, so they all have different temperaments. They have different venom levels. Some are medically significant, some are not. Some have urticating hairs, which is the new world, and then the old worlds just have the potent venom. So there's a lot more to them, and I guess that's why it's a little daunting, I guess. But I guess what everybody's wondering is like, why spiders? Why are we in love with these tarantulas that is usually like a big fear for a lot of people. So what is it for you about your tarantulas that is most interesting and one of the biggest reasons why you got into them other than the fear?
So, what I found more interesting about spiders in general, not just tarantulas, but just the way that they live. They're so secretive, they're so shy.
Hmm.
And when you do get to observe them and see them, you can actually see how beautiful they really are and how unique they are in every way. And I'm also including true spiders in there too. Just the different lifestyles they have, just the way that they depend on, different ways of surviving. Their lives are a lot harder in the wild, and it is very impressive, the things that they have to do to just survive, especially knowing that the majority of them are pretty blind.
Right,
Um,
right.
yeah,
In which a lot of people don't even realize that because they have the AI, so you would think that they would have extraordinary eyesight, but they really don't. Like the tarantulas don't. The jumping spiders and the other two spiders do have better eyesight, but the tarantulas are definitely like they can't see nothing. Like they can't even see who we are. Like they
no.
don't recognize our face, but our jumping spiders will. Which that makes a really great point, Liz. And that's why we do keep tarantulas in captivity for anybody that's wondering. That's the biggest reason is because number one, their environments are being destroyed, housing and deforestation and everything like that, but also because it's so hard for tarantulas to live life in the wild and to reach maturity, produce egg sacs, and do everything that they're meant to do without something crawling into their burrow and eating them, because that's as simple as it could be. Because majority the females will live in their burrows majority of their life, and then the males will eventually leave the burrow and wander to find the female. But
Which
and
is so dangerous for them because that it leaves them so vulnerable to so many things happening to them. Any
right.
kind of predator to come and getting them, other than like tarantula hawks. I mean, birds can also come down and eat them.
Right, right, yeah. And uh you guys, me and Liz personally went to Tarantula Fest last year here in Colorado. They have it in La Junta, and it's the great male migration. And even then, us being in the cars, like that's a danger to them, you know, because like at nighttime they are crossing the roads, you know, and cars don't see them, and you know usually people are just like, oh, that's a nasty giant spider, I want to run it over, you know. And it's just like, oh, but you don't realize how long it took for that poor male to get to that point, and you know all the hardships he's endured. But you know you got to give it to him though, for sure.
Oh yeah, I mean, people look at these spiders as like a pest or disgusting. I hate that word. And
I
just things like
know.
that. But they, like all invertebrates and other arthropods, they play a major role for the ecosystem in the world. They
Hmm.
really do keep pests under control a lot. Without spiders, we would have an enormous amount of mosquitoes, flies, rodents. You know, we have to depend on our, bigger bodied species that do take down like small rodents and small little reptiles that come across their way, because they are opportunistic.
Right.
So,
Right.
and imagine a world without that. We would just have so much of other things that we don't want.
Right. Right, and those other bugs do affect us, but like the spiders, they really just hang out by themselves. They don't really want to bother us. Like, you know, even spiders I found in my house, they're in the corner away from me, somewhere else, not like in my bed, crawling on me, biting me and stuff. So, yeah, I do think that's like a really big misconception, and I do think that if people did see tarantulas like in captivity, how we keep them and what they're really like, because they are really magical for sure. Because like you know they're so scary, but at the same time, once you get to know them, they're almost personable. What do you
I
think? You
agree.
know,
Yeah,
because they
absolutely.
because they all have like you know their own individual personalities for sure. And you know I know they don't have a brain and they're not super intelligent, but they are conditioned. You can condition them to a certain point, I do believe. What do you
Oh
think?
yeah, absolutely. Of course. Yeah. I love talking about this because a lot of people think it's just pure instinctual or primitive, thoughts, which it is. But I've also noticed too that tarantulas can be conditioned. And I did learn this like not too long ago. A few weeks ago, there was a talk that when your tarantulas can recognize like your rhythm of footsteps and they won't
Yes.
run off and hide because they know you're not a danger, or they're conditioned to know like when it's feeding time they know that there's going to be a bright light,
Right,
like
right,
for some of us that do use like a ring light or some kind of light to look at them better,
right,
that they don't run off and hide. I mean, yeah, they'll stay out for a little bit, and then sometimes I know with some of mine they will go and eventually hide because they don't like bright light at the end of the
right,
day. But
right.
yeah, they can be conditioned to tolerate, certain things like that. But
Yeah, yeah,
but I, but
go
they
ahead.
will have instinctual reactions, like if they're not expecting a larger prey or a draft of wind, then yeah, they'll kind of get scared and freak out and go hide and retreat.
For sure, for sure. I've noticed with my own tarantulas, like I can be in the room, like when I'm home by myself, like when my boyfriend's gone working, I like, you know, everybody's out, they're all hanging out, and then like sometimes when my husband comes home, like they're just like scattering, you know? But after a while he's here, then like they chill out and, you know, they aren't as sporadic. But there is definitely they definitely know like when I'm in here or versus like when he's in here. And
No,
I was
most definitely. Yeah. I mean, like people don't really realize like how shy and scared they really are. Like there's one time I walked a little bit too hard and literally my tarantula went to a corner for like 10 hours.
yeah.
Didn't move from there.
Yeah, they you know, I like to think like I always tell my mom when I'm talking to her because she has cats. And you know, she's always telling me about what her cats are doing. I'm like, you know, tarantulas are just like cats. Like literally, like they clean themselves, they're easily spooked, but like, you know, they do have that I do understand why they have that first reaction of like fight or flight though, because naturally in the wild that's like their natural instincts because you know they're used to like animals coming in to try and eat them, not like take care of them. But for sure.
I mean, that's why they do hide, because even though they look, I mean, part of their look is a defense, right? I mean, you look at something with a bunch of legs like that, it'll freak you out.
Yeah, oh yeah.
But the reality is, with spiders and tarantulas, their bodies are super vulnerable. That abdomen is super squishy, and all of their organs are stored in that abdomen. Their heart, their lungs, their stomach, everything is in that abdomen. And so because it's squishy and it's not as hard as their carapace and their legs, anything can happen to them. And yeah, if my body was built that way, I would probably run.
Yeah, I would too. I'd be hiding for life, you know? What is something you wish you knew before getting into the hobby?
How quickly addicting it can be.
For sure, for sure. I remember getting into the hobby thinking I was only gonna have to rehouse my spiderlings like every couple months. Oh, it turned out like every 2 months. And then I was buying hundreds of dollars worth of enclosures. And I was like,
Yeah,
geez.
I wish someone would have told me how quickly it can be to run out of space, and or anticipate the space that you will need when it eventually does grow to that size, depending on what you get. I know dwarves are a personal favorite of mine because I can keep a bunch of them in tiny little enclosures and they don't take up much space. But I wish I did know that, that they can be addicting. They can be, because you do get excited because with tarantulas, there's so many different types of species with different markings, different colors. You
Yes.
have your tree dwelling species, your terrestrials that live like semi above ground, and then you have your fossorials that live completely underground. And when you're a person that is so enthusiastic about them, you kind of want to touch a little bit of everything, and then you go, oh, I did not anticipate that I need a lot more space.
Right. Yeah,
So
I just ran into that same thing because I just bought a bunch of new shelvings, like even this one behind me, because I was running out of space. Like it was fine at first, and then everybody started to grow up and get big, and I have
yeah.
like a bunch of big enclosures, and they're taking up way more space. So definitely, I do think that is something to think about is space, money, because tarantulas
Hmm.
are expensive. I mean, they're not as expensive as a lot of reptiles, but they're still expensive. You can still
Yeah,
spend a couple $100 a year,
yeah. Yeah,
just
it's
rehousing.
especially depending on how many you own. Yeah, it can get pricey when it comes to consistently buying cork bark if you're not able to reuse it.
Hmm.
The amount of substrate that you have to use, unless, I mean, like, the good thing too about tarantula keeping is that you can go as expensive as you want and as inexpensive as you want.
So
Because
true.
yeah, because when I first started keeping, I used cocoa fiber.
Oh,
I
yeah.
didn't use Reptisoil. I used cocoa fiber. That was during that time. That's what was mainly recommended, was cocoa fiber. I didn't have any issues with it. The only issue that I had was with my deeper burrowing spiders. It didn't hold their burrows that well. Eventually, it would collapse. It wouldn't, like, just over time, it just wouldn't hold up, and then I would have to rehouse a lot more than usual, no matter how many times I would like pack it down as hard as I could just for it to hopefully have support, and it just wouldn't hold. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, now I use Reptisoil, and it's a little more, not too much more, but
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, because when you go to a reptile store, the substrate alone for a big 14-quart bag is $30. And
mhm.
then, the enclosures, depending, you can go tarantula cribs, my personal favorite. You can do critter keepers. Those are just as good. I sometimes even use the Zillas too, because, as long as they hold up. But,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
I have a little bit of everything too. I do have tarantula cribs, not so many. I have a few. And
right, yeah.
I do have some Thrive enclosures. I do have Exoterra. I do have critter keepers, and I also have them in storage bins and
Hmm.
little containers that I poke holes in.
Right, because they
So
don't know the difference. They really don't.
No, what's more important is that they're set up the right way.
Right,
For
right.
depending on how they live. If it's a tree dwelling spider, you're not going to put it in something that's more wide, right? You're going to put it in something that is taller. And same
Mm-hmm.
thing with like a deeper burrowing species. You're going to use something that is more wider than tall. So as long as they're set up like how they're meant to be set up, it doesn't matter what you put them in.
Right, right. And, providing that good enrichment for them so they can,
Mm-hmm.
do their thing. I've noticed, I noticed my tarantulas, doesn't matter how much enrichment I give them, they are always utilizing everything. I mean, at least like they're digging, they always make their houses exactly like how they want them. Like I can set it up any way I want, but they're gonna end up doing their own thing eventually.
Yeah, yeah, they're gonna make it their own for sure. There's times where I've set up a terrestrial, made that pre-made burrow, and they will not use it. They will
Oh
just
yeah,
go to a corner and burrow there.
so
Or
many
if
times.
yeah, or if I put some plants on, the opposite side, they'll just yank them out and just put it wherever they feel is best. They'll decorate
Right.
their own room however they want
Yes.
to.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I have spiders too that won't use the entire space. Some of them will
Mhm.
just stay in that one little spot, and that's where they're comfortable at. That's where they feel safe, and that's where they want to be.
Oh yeah, that's my GBB. She's always in the same spot.
And
I know, we
then I
should do
also
that. Sorry, I seen Kat's comment. We should give him a little toy ball. We should do our own little experiment. What do you think?
yeah, I've seen people do that. They put like a little plastic like ping pong ball in there, and I see that they push it around sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's so funny. They're like, "What is this?" I mean, they
Yeah,
always check out everything that you put in their enclosure, especially anything new. They're
yeah,
always wondering
absolutely.
what it is because they can't see. They're only feeling with their legs. That's why they're like using those 8 legs to go up and down and feel around so they can,
I know.
get a feeling of their space.
I think it's adorable when they walk around and you can see them like lay out little web as they go around, and it's just like,
Yeah,
okay, you're kind of marking where things are and
yeah,
making
yeah,
it
yeah.
familiar to you.
Yeah, making it their territory for sure.
Yeah.
Uh, so Liz, what's your favorite species?
Oh man, I love and hate this question.
I know, me too.
It's like, okay, so I do have personal favorites, like we all do, right? Like we all get a
Yeah.
little bit more excited to see some than others, but I do have to say, like, as a genus completely, I have two of them. So I absolutely love the Theraphosa genus.
For sure.
I love all three of mine. My Theraphosa blondie, which is just the regular Goliath bird eater, for those that are not familiar with scientific names yet. She's my absolute favorite. Her name is Kronos, and she just
Yes.
recently molted like about a week or so ago. She's massive.
I
I
met
just
her.
and yeah, you did. And
I did.
I know like as far as like in color, I know like a lot of people don't find it exciting. They're just like a brown spider, but to me what I find like so fascinating is just how large these species get and how
Oh my
they're
God.
like I mean I keep my house at pretty warm temperature, so they all three of mine did grow pretty quickly, but
Hmm.
they just like it's just so incredible how they pack on size through each molt. It's
Oh
like every
yeah.
every time she molts, I'm like, dang, you were in that and now you're bigger. um
It sometimes
Another
makes you wonder. Sorry, it sometimes makes you wonder how they fit in those exoskeletons like
I
before.
know, right? Or like when they're in that heavy primo, and I'm like, just do it. You look
Just
so
yeah.
tight in that. Like you looked miserable.
I know. I
Um,
know.
Another genus that I like, it is on the dwarf side, and that's why I like
Mm.
it because you could, I don't know, dwarfs, they don't take space, guys. Like
No.
dwarfs can
No.
come in so many different colors and they come with big personalities. And I
Yeah.
find that so hilarious because I feel like I'm like, do you know that you're tiny?
No. They
But
don't.
I love the Serocosmus species. Love the
Yes.
Serocosmus. It doesn't matter which species in the genus that you get, whether it's the elegans, the leti, the rete, and I know the list goes on with
Oh
them, but
yes.
I love that patterning that they have on their butt, that it looks like a heart. and it's like
Yes.
shiny, which is like what we call the mirror patch. And I know like
Hmm.
grammostolas have that too. They have like that shiny mirror patch on their butt. But
Yeah,
I
May's got
love
one.
this. I love the Sericosma species. Just that striping that they have on their abdomen or sometimes like on their legs is they're just so beautiful. And a lot of them also have like that black triangle that kind of goes up on their heads like that. It's just so unique, that patterning. And so, but that's what I would have to say that they're like my favorites. I do have other favorites, but you know, if I had to like my top
Hmm.
super large Theraphosa's and then my teeny
Yes.
tiny little Sericosma species.
Hmm.
They're
Yeah,
just wonderful.
I don't even have a Goliath bird eater yet, and I really want one. I want to get it as a sling though, so I can watch it grow up. But I, for the same reason that you like yours, because they get ginormous. They're like a foot across. They're just like big giant dinner plates. I mean, like that's only something you would see in the jungle, and that's where they live is in the jungle. They're eating birds, mice, whatever they can get their hands on. Um,
Right, right.
mhm.
I've raised all three of mine, my Theraphosa Blondie, Apophysis, and Sturmey as slings for the sole purpose of just getting to know them as they grow and just experiencing their whole life cycle as a whole.
Right,
Nothing is more rewarding than raising your spider from a sling all the way up to maturity. No
for
one
sure.
can tell you anything about that spider or that species is specific, especially if you have more than one. You can
Yes.
absolutely tell somebody how it lives from sling to maturity, because I know that there are some species that when they are slings, they need humidity. And then as they get older, they don't need as much humidity. And you can see behavior change too. Like they get,
Hmm.
like when they're younger, they're more skittish. And then as they get older, they're more brave, they're more bold, they
Yes.
can stay out more. But I would say, like, for anyone that wants to get into keeping Goliath bird eaters, keep them as slings. It's really rewarding to see that growth and to see when they gain that size per, you know, in between molts. It's so incredible. It's such a big payoff. And then it's not as shocking to you either when you open the lid and you see like how massive they are and they're just sitting there. And I know
Yeah.
like the one pesky question I get all the time is like, does it climb up and eat birds? Like, no. No.
No, it
Um,
stays inside. They usually always will stay inside their enclosure unless you were to spook them
yeah.
and make
Because
them
like
run out.
because they got their name because the person that did discover them did see one eat a bird. But realistically, they are opportunistic. So if that little bird, let's say, unfortunately, a baby bird falls out of the nest,
It's
it's comes comes
it's
across
dinner.
the Goliath bird eater, it's at that size, it will eat it. They're carnivorous. They'll take
Yep.
it. And same thing
Yep.
with like any small little reptile, they'll eat it. If
Yep.
it comes across its path and it's hungry, it will
Yeah.
take it.
That's why, yep, that's why they're opportunistic. But
Mhm.
yeah, for everybody watching, if you guys are a little bit scared to get into tarantulas or you're thinking about getting tarantulas and you're shy and nervous about owning a tarantula, like I was personally, I recommend, like Liz says, start off with slings and grow with them because you will get so familiar with that spider, that species. You'll be able to anticipate what they're going to do every time you interact with them so that you know that the interactions are going to go smoothly and it's not so daunting, like Liz said, because opening an enclosure to a big threatening tarantula would scare anybody. I mean, I get intimidated when my golden blue leg baboon starts slapping at me and she's not even going to come out of her enclosure. She's going to sit there and slap at me and I'm like, girl, why are you doing this? There's no reason. Like, because her enclosure, she has a burrow to escape into. She's got web hides to escape into, but she'd rather come out and confront me and be like, hey, get out of my house. So it's like, if somebody were to get that spider, you would want them to be prepared for that because then, if you're giving people spiders like that and, that's their first spider, it's going to make them really scared and reluctant to like continue to do the hobby or even interact with that spider, because I mean, it takes
Right.
a lot
Yeah.
of practice.
Yeah, I know that some species can be very temperamental. Even if your care is A1, it's all
Yes.
good. Some of them will feel bold. And so
Mm-hmm.
and you have to work your way around them. They're never gonna get, used to you. You have
No.
to get used to them. You be prepared on what to do. So if you know, um, like I know for say some of mine that behave a little defensive, sometimes I just give them a minute.
Yeah.
I open that enclosure, they give me a threat posture, and I'm like, all right, we'll just hang out for a second, calm
Mm-hmm.
down, and then offer the food and water.
Right. Yeah, because they're
So,
usually a little bit more willing to eat if you're not like, opening the enclosure right away and then throwing it straight out and not letting them
mhm,
just get used to that air. Because, like, even when you open the enclosure, you can see the web is moving because of all the air from, like, the room. They feel that, and all those hairs on their legs, that setae is super sensitive, so they can feel
mhm.
you breathe on them. That's why, like, when I'm recording my videos, I'm, like, holding my breath, like, a lot because I'm trying not to, like, directly breathe on them because they'll scatter.
Yeah, those hairs are extremely sensitive. That is true. Those hairs can even pick up scents, okay?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I can't be like, like with a lot of perfume on or anything like that.
Mm-mm.
They do not like that.
I don't wear perfume anymore personally, just because this is my
Yeah.
lifestyle and my
Mhm.
animals are in my home. If I burn a candle, I shut the door to the pet room, I open up all the windows, let it air out. But other than that, I don't wear perfume because
Mhm.
my animals are sensitive and I'm not going to do that to them.
Yeah,
I
the only
mean,
time I ever wear it is if I'm going out, like I'm leaving the house.
right,
Anytime
right.
I have to deal with them or anything like that, I do not wear anything. And same thing, if I ever like turn on a candle or anything like that, it is away from them. I do open windows. Yeah, they are very sensitive. So if same thing for like if for some of you that like smoke at home, think about that. Like kind
Yeah.
of stay away from them too.
Yeah, don't
So,
be
because
smoking in the same room as them. It's just not great.
yeah,
I
it's
mean,
it's not good.
it's okay to a certain point, but
Yeah, yeah,
if you're gonna
and
have
they'll.
animals in your home, be considerate.
Oh yeah,
Because I
right.
yell at my boyfriend all the time because he vapes, and I quit vaping last October for the reason of my animals. Because I realized that it had like that bug stuff in it. I can't remember what the name is, but it's just not good for the animals. So I just stopped smoking personally. And if I catch him in here vaping, I'm like, get out of there! What are you doing?
Yeah, I
Bossing him
quit.
around.
I quit smoking last August. Like more for health reasons, but yeah, you just can't do it around them. It's not good. And besides, I did
Yeah.
get tired of stepping outside and
Oh
doing
yeah, yeah. Seriously.
that.
So before you got your first tarantula and you were doing all of your research, where were you looking for your research? Where can you find research and good information on tarantulas?
So the first YouTube, because at first I went to YouTube. The first YouTuber that I ran across was Richard from the Tarantula Collective.
Yes, we love Richard.
And love Richard, very very informative. And then he had a video of like his top 5 beginners,
Hmm.
and it helped a lot. And then another person too was Tom Moran,
Hmm.
very much on the educational side, maybe because he's a teacher and it's good. But
Yeah, he has
um
really great information, insightful information.
mhm,
If you guys want to listen and check out Tom Moran's podcast, which I recommend that you do, it's on Spotify by Tom's Big Spiders. It has lots of
mhm.
information, really great information. So check him out for sure. And you
Yes, that
guys can
man
just listen
has.
to it.
Yeah, he has hundreds and hundreds. So even if you're looking for something like species specific, he'll have
Yes,
it.
yes,
It'll be
yes.
there.
It will.
But pretty much those two guys I ran into first. And then I kind of just did like the basic Google search. But what also ultimately helped too was going to my local reptile shop at Scales and Tails. Those guys
Yes.
were a true help. It really does help when you talk to someone who's in it and they can
Hmm.
show you the animal and you can actually look at it and get a feel for it. Because Richard said this not too long ago too, and it's super true. You can do your research and watch all the videos all you want, but until you get that experience, until you actually buy that spider and you set it up and you put it in there, then you'll get a real feel as to what it's like to keep them. And
Yeah.
my first spider was the Aphanopelma chalcodes, which is the Arizona blonde. Still
Perfect.
have her.
Yes. Yes. That's a great
Um,
one to start with. Perfect species.
yeah, because it's dry and arid, so don't have to worry about humidity. It goes on hunger strikes, so you don't have to feed
Yes.
it as much.
Mine's always
So
hungry. She always wants to eat. I'm like, girl, you're so fat. She's like, give me another one.
mine is on the thin side right now because it just doesn't want to eat. It's been on a hunger strike for like 9 months. And
I'm
every
sure
week I
she'll
still
do
try
it.
because you never know. I try every
Yeah.
week because you never know when finally she's going to be like, yeah, you know what? I'm just going to take that cricket today.
That's
But
so true. That's so true. For you guys out there that have some stubborn tarantulas that are like going on hunger strikes, always, always offer them food at least once a week. It doesn't hurt to just throw a
try.
little dead cricket in there and see if they want it. All you have to do is remove it if they don't want it. That's why I squish all the
Mhm.
heads on my crickets. I just had a question on YouTube of why I did that. And so I'm going to tell you guys really quick right now why I kill my crickets before I feed my tarantulas because number one, they will hide in the burrows of the tarantulas. They'll hide in like spaces that are just like little crevices that are hard to find them. You'll end up having to turn over your tarantula's enclosure just trying to get them out, looking for them. Because if your tarantula goes and molt, that cricket has the opportunity to possibly munch on your tarantula while they're really delicate and fragile, and they will, because I have seen my own crickets when I kill a cricket and I leave it in there for a little bit too long, the other crickets will start eating it whole. So I'm just like, yeah, they'll definitely do that to a tarantula. But that's why, I pre-kill my cricket so I can just, I can put it directly in front of my tarantula. They're not running around. That cricket's not jumping out of the enclosure. My tarantula is following after it, which could be you. As you know, you've seen that before, where in an instance that a high prey-driven tarantula went after some food and fell off a shelf and died because its abdomen exploded.
Yeah,
So
I did see that with another YouTuber, and it was very brave of him to share that because things
yeah,
do happen, accidents happen, and when we share those things, it's not to shame the keeper as being irresponsible, but it's just to kind of show us like, don't do that, you
right.
know?
Always take your tarantulas off the shelf when you're feeding them. Don't feed them
Always.
up when they're always like all the way up there. Even your arboreals, like
Yeah.
my Avic Alfredo, sometimes I don't know what she's gonna do. Sometimes she does a backflip to get that cricket. Sometimes she scatters. I don't know what she's gonna do. So I always put all my tarantulas on the floor when I'm gonna feed them.
Yeah, same here.
And
I
you do
have like
too.
a
You do it on the
yeah,
table.
I have a low set table. And
Yes.
so don't be lazy. Get them off that shelf, okay?
Mm-hmm.
It's a workout anyways. Just, picking them up, putting them down, putting them back.
Yeah, yeah,
But
and grab your little duster too and dust off those enclosures. I can't stand that crap. I'm like, why is it so dusty? Get in there
yeah,
and start dusting.
yeah, taking them down from the enclosure, from not the enclosure, but taking them down from the shelf is a lot safer. Because I
Yeah.
know that even if I do actually have tons of them that get very excited for prey and they chase after it.
Yes.
But another thing too is like I've seen this happen with my Carabiner versicolor a couple of times where I would spray water and the water scares her and she'll just come running out. And so
Yeah.
sometimes you always have your catch cup. Always have
Yes.
your catch cup. You
Mine
never
does
know
the
when they're gonna
same.
bolt out.
Mine does the
My
same.
my Hapalopus formosus, ooh, I had to run after that one.
Oh my god, mine are so crazy. My mature male has jumped out of his enclosure on me twice because I
Yeah.
accidentally spooked him, feeding him. Like all he did was throw the cricket near him, and it spooked him so bad that he went running, and I was like, ah! Of
I
course, I had my catch cup, grabbed the catch cup, and I was like, you little
Oh
turd.
my God, my Hapalopus formosus. I'm on my second one because my first one that I had matured out. He was old man spooky. That's why I named him Spooky.
Yes.
He lived past his expectation, like his life expectancy. I'm like, bro, you're still hanging on. I mean, he looked like old man. Like he would just be shaky, walking, bald. He was a bald old man. But
I got
I'm on
one
my
too.
so I'm
My
on my
my male's
second.
bald.
I'm on my second Hapalopus formosus, and it's a juvenile right now. Still in sex. Don't know what it is yet, but I was
Mhm.
spraying water and it came running out. And so it went under my table, cupped it, put it back on top of the table because it ran on the opposite side of my table. So I go and I walk back around, sit down. I'm like, okay, let's put you back in. Got it back in the enclosure, and it runs right back out again.
Right.
And I totally bashed my knee into the corner of my into my table too because my table's low, and so had to
Yeah.
like I had to tough that one out and then cup it again and then like put it back and secure it back in the enclosure. And I'm like, okay, now I can baby my knee. And I'm like, ah,
Yeah.
but
I can definitely second that. Both of my
they're
Hapalopus
crazy.
formosus are crazy.
I'm like,
They are
why?
just nuts.
They are runners, okay?
Yes.
For
Yes.
anyone that wants to get a pumpkin patch,
Don't get it for your
they are.
first one. Don't get it for your first one. I did that and I was terrified. I was like, every time I open the lid, she's running around in circles. Then
But
there's
then,
always
like,
that chance they're gonna come out. That is the species that would come out.
yeah, Hapalopus formosus, they will run out.
Yeah.
But it's funny because then my Hapalopus borhehi for borgohi, tomato, he won't do that. He'll
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
he'd rather flick hair at me and just go deep into his burrow. He will not come out.
Yeah, that's what they do. I think that's what my pumpkin patches did when they were little, is they only flick hair at me. Now they're just full on runners.
Yeah, they're track stars. They'll just go out there. And I'd rather
Yeah,
not. It's like, please
yeah.
don't do that. I can't lose you. You're not that big.
No, no, they're not. They stay small. Mine is at least like, as big as this. That's as big as they get. It's
Yeah.
like good 2 inches, 2.5
Yeah.
inches.
Yeah.
Uh, so what kind of advice would you give to somebody that is new to the hobby?
The advice that I would give somebody that is brand new is to still continue to educate yourself on your tarantula. Don't just only simply go by like, oh, it's a terrestrial, I'm going to set it up as a terrestrial. Is it humidity dependent? I feed once a week kind of thing. I say get to know where do they come from in the world?
Right.
Keep educating yourself on, temperament and things like that. Never be complacent. So
Hmm.
don't put your guard down ever. Because
No.
at the end of the day, these guys are still unpredictable
Hmm.
and they'll do anything. Like you think, because I have two Alphanopelma chalcodes. One is very skittish and the other one is not.
Hmm.
The one that is not could one day be skittish the day I open the enclosure. You
Yeah.
never know what kind of day they're having.
Right.
Um, so always continue educating yourself on tarantula care because I see that over time it continues to change for the better.
Right.
And
Because we're
and
learning new
always
stuff all the time. Because
all
the
the
hobby,
time.
this hobby is such a niche hobby that it's only
Mhm.
us people that are keeping the tarantulas that are actually doing the real research.
Yeah, and
You
and
know,
just and just never put your guard down. Never be
yeah.
complacent.
Don't ever stick your hand in the enclosure with a tarantula. I don't care if it's been nice to you before. Don't ever stick your hands in the enclosure. I've had my opponent Palmasimanis give me a wake up call, because I thought she was gonna be chill and went to go touch her water dish one time. I was being dumb. I stuck my hand in there and oh my god, she turned around so quick. I screamed. I was like,
Mhm.
jeez. She
Mhm.
literally stomped at me and I was like, okay, that's my, stop being stupid, Jenny. Don't be putting your fingers in there because sometimes I feel like, oh, that'll be okay. No, Don't ever do that.
No,
Always use
yeah.
tongs, especially with those water dishes. The tarantulas are always temperamental about tarantula water dishes. Some species more than others, but I have a few that will literally mess me up over just touching their water dish, you know?
Yeah, that's theirs, okay?
It's
And
there.
but but also too, guys, respect your animal.
Yeah.
Respect your animal. Don't, I mean, as much as I think a threat posture is funny, especially if it's just like the other night I was feeding and my Phormicticus species Dominican purple got so scared over a little
Yes.
worm. um yeah, just respect them. Don't poke them, don't taunt them. Like this, it's not for fun, because it's not going to be fun when you get bit.
Yeah,
Okay,
and it's not good
I've
for the
never been
hobby.
bit, but
Me neither.
don't. Respect
I
your
don't.
animals, always respect them. So
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a good point because tarantulas are like fish. They're good pet to look at, but they're not the kind that you're going to be taking out every day to mess with, and because they don't want our attention like that. They would rather be left alone because they don't understand what's going on anyways. So to take them out is, without it being purposeful, without being it for the purpose of education to show others that, they aren't as aggressive as they are portrayed in like Hollywood. Then it's just like, why are you playing with this tarantula? I mean, there's the risk of dropping them. There's so much crap that can happen in that instance, because I do believe in handling within the purpose of educating people and getting over your own fears. And as long as it's in a controlled environment, it's fine. But, you know, I don't
yeah,
completely ban handling, but
yeah,
I do say that.
yeah, I also compare them to fish too. It is just a pet to mainly observe. If you
Yes.
want something cuddly, there's pets for that too.
Right.
You know
And
which ones. And
that,
tarantulas are not it. And also too, when it comes to handling, no, when your tarantula is like gently crawling out, it's not because it's trying to say hi. Okay, they
no,
don't they
no,
don't they don't comprehend that.
no.
Um,
They're
and
like, what
also
just made
too,
movement?
yeah, yeah. And also too, with like with handling, always know the risk. Again, I will say again, they are unpredictable. So not only are you putting the animal at risk, but you're putting yourself at risk. Okay. And
Yeah.
so always know your tarantula's body language. They will let you know.
Yes, and
And
always
that's
test.
always the best part about them. They will always warn you before something bad happens. And sometimes, like if they're on your hand and you accidentally breathe on them, they can bolt out of your hand.
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
if you are handling anyone that's handling, sit down, be in a
sit around.
seated or on your or on the floor, even better. In case of anything like that happens, they're safe. You're safe, and you can safely cup them, put them back.
Yes.
Um, and also too, I don't like the word aggressive. There was something that Tom Moran did say that I did like, that I also would like to say here too, because I'm like, he's right. When you call an animal aggressive, you are taking away the responsibility of the keeper, because
Yes.
now you're saying that if anything does go wrong, it's not your fault, it's the animal's fault, and that is not true.
Right.
So if they do end up being defensive, it is for a reason, and it may not
Yes.
always be your fault. Like I said, like a feeder could scare them,
Hmm.
but they will defend themselves for a
Always.
reason.
Always.
So
They will.
always take accountability for your pet and how they react and what they do.
Right.
So yeah, never, I would never call anything aggressive, because that again is taking away the responsibility and the accountability of the keeper.
Right.
So
And an aggressive animal is one that goes out of its own way to
to
attack
get
something
you.
else.
Yeah.
It's like a bear that's been walking around in its territory and it sees you and it's like, I'm going to eliminate you because you're a
Yeah.
threat. It's not the same thing with tarantulas at
No.
all. They're
No.
they're very peaceful animals, and the only people that are getting bitten by them are the drunk people kicking sand at them, and they're
Mm-hmm.
reacting to what's going on. Like you can't. I mean, the thing is about tarantulas is yes, they are not like dogs and cats. You scare a dog, they might just run away, or for certain breeds, they might just turn around and bark at you and chase you back. But tarantulas are kind of like the same way. They're always going to defend themselves, like you said,
Yeah.
because that's just their nature. That's just their
Yeah,
life.
they will more than likely, if they're set up correctly, they will always retreat. They will
Hmm.
always retreat. Even old worlds, they
Yes.
will stand ground and they will throw a threat posture and be like, back off. But
Yes.
if you really look at it, they're trying to hide back. They're trying to make sure they go back safe.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah. For sure.
and that's why I always tell people, tarantulas, they are shy creatures. They're just
Hmm.
shy, gentle creatures. They live solitary. They don't want anybody messing with them. They're not going to mess with you. They're very peaceful. I have some of them, like, that I can, like, let's say I need to go refill my water bottle. I can leave them there with the lid open. They will
Hmm.
stay there because they
Hmm.
feel safe.
Right.
So, not that I'm saying like, oh, just like leave all the lids unopened,
No.
but
No.
just to kind of get rid of that, that people say like, oh, it's like, especially like when I introduce my spiders to people that are not familiar with them or they're not used to them, they'll be like, oh my god, you left the lid open, it's gonna run out, it's gonna jump out. And I'm like, no, it's not. I'm like,
That's his
it's
home.
chill, it's gonna stay right there, it's cool, we're cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah. I can
but
trust
yeah,
some of mine too, and then others I know they'll walk away.
they'll take a wander, they'll take a walk, they'll be
Yeah,
like,
because they feel
ooh.
the air. They feel the
Uh-huh.
air, and they're like testing out. They're like, "Oh, all this openness. I feel that breeze, so I gotta
Hmm.
explore." They're curious too, you know. They want to know what's going on outside their enclosures.
Yeah, most definitely. And yeah, I know some people will say they don't have a lot of personality. Yeah, they do. I feel like, because I have like about 80 of them personally, and I feel like
Mhm.
each one, they're similar, but they're also different at the same
Oh
time.
yes. Oh
You
yeah.
know, like
Oh
I even
yeah.
have some that are from the same egg sac and they'll grow at different rates, have different personalities. So as much like how I was saying about like my egg chalcodes, one is chill, one is not, she's very
Yeah.
skittish. That can happen, with it. You can have the same species, and some of them will be the same, some of them will not be the same. I
Yes.
actually have a mean grandma stola. My
Which
grandma stola,
one?
the Iharingi.
Oh
Debo.
yes. Oh
I
yes.
called her Debo for a reason. She's mean.
I remember meeting her.
This last molt, she's chilled out a little bit, so I don't know. Hopefully, this is it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about how when tarantulas molt, they change personality wise.
oh yeah, definitely. I see it happen mostly when they're kind of leaving that sling juvenile stage.
Mm-hmm.
um, because they are smaller. So they are more skittish. They're like, I compare them to like teenagers.
Yes.
They're like, I don't want to hang out with you. I'm gonna go hide. Like some of
Yeah.
them are more reclusive, and they don't, they just have an attitude sometimes. Like I'll go and offer it food, and they'll slap at their food and full threat, fangs flaring. Sorry, my cuckoo
Yeah.
clock is about to go off. So if
Oh,
you
it's
guys hear
okay.
that, and I
The
also
birds
have
in the
birds,
background.
my
Yeah.
birds too. Um, but as they kind of grow older, they kind of grow out of that. They kind of mature out of that.
Hmm.
And some of them will hang out more. They'll be more
Yeah.
bold, so you can't really push them around. So rehousing becomes a little bit different too. Like I
Yes.
can't
Talk about
easily.
that.
Yeah, so
Talk
when they
about
do
that.
when they do get older, they do get braver. It's almost like they know their full potential. So when they're younger, yeah, it is kind of easier to push them around, with your paintbrush or with your, with a stick or straw, whatever it is that you normally use. And it's easier, right? But when
Yes.
they're older, they kind of do stand their ground a little bit more. Like with my Theraphosa blondie, when I had to move her into something bigger, the stick that I was poking her with, she was grabbing it and biting it. So she wasn't as easy to take out.
Oh yeah.
so so
It-
be mentally prepared for that too, that as they get older they will be a little bit tougher, and it just depends on the species, right? Like with Poecilotheria, they're more shy and they're more skittish, so they're a lot easier to, you know, rehouse and poke
They
and
are.
move around. But you will have those that will stand their ground as they get older, and they're not gonna take that.
No, no, and they'll
So
let you know. They'll let you know, and
mhm.
it's not fun. I personally sometimes like when I first got into keeping. Oh, for like the first 4 to 5 months, I would shake. Like I would get so nervous about opening that lid that I would be shaking. And when I rehoused my Pokey Louie that one time, I have a video on YouTube. I was so scared. He was running all over the place. He was scaring the crap out of me. But now that I've been breeding my Pokies and I've been working closely with Louie, I know him a lot better. I'm not as scared of him. I can take him out when he's hanging outside the log. I can trust that he's not going to take off because I know him. And he is not super. I mean, he's still skittish, but he's never like turn around and like try to bite me or anything like that. Um, I do love my pokies. I have to tell you that I love my pokies. That's one of my favorite species, and that and I think I'm like more into the old world because I really love when they throw back that sass. Because I
I,
I'm low key sassy, so I love when they give me some they talk crap to me.
Yeah, I mean, it does come with it too. When you keep for a while, you start getting to know yourself and what kind of species you like. And
Yes.
personally, I love the old world fossorials. I'm really starting to
Oh
touch
my
into
gosh.
that so much, like the
Yes.
chilobrachys, especially. Like I'm like, you know what? They're not that bad. They're not so
Girl,
bad.
girl, I have to tell you, since I got my first Kilobrakis, I have a Kilobrachys sorabori that I got from Dritz at Dritz Duerden. This is my first like actual like mostly fossil because you know like we have like some semi-fossorial, semi-terrestrial species. This is my actual fossorial species. Well, no, I can't say that, but this I was worried about the fossorial species keeping them, and I did stay away from it for the longest time because I thought I'd never see mine. But I see mine every day almost. Like he's always hanging out. He's actually away from his burrow, hanging out in the substrate, just chilling. I thought that
Yeah,
was so cool because I thought I was never going to see it. And the webbing that these fossorial species do, oh my gosh,
it's
it's so
cool.
beautiful. It's like
Yeah,
something straight out of Hollywood, dude. Like my
yeah.
OBT, her enclosure, like she's in a critter keeper, which you would think like I would have ruined her web bar now by taking the lid off, but it's molded. I mean, she's been in that enclosure for a good couple months now, so like that webbing is just like it's there now. So like when I open the enclosure, it's just like it's huge. It's crazy. Like I almost want to show you guys. Hold on. It's crazy. Where is she? I've moved her. Oh, she's actually right here. And I'm glad I have my headphones on 'cause she usually slaps at me, but I mean, just look at this.
Yeah. Yo, Sriracha did a good job with that. Look at that.
Yeah, look at it. Where is she? Oh, there she is. She's like, oh, lady, what the heck? But yeah, she's
Yeah. I
chill.
mean,
That's
because I know a lot of people stray away from fossorials just because, they feel like, oh, you're never gonna see it. But yeah,
mm-hmm.
you'd be surprised how many times you do when they actually kind of poke their little legs out and you kind of see them for a second, and it's so rewarding
Yeah,
to
and
see them. And I find them much easier to read because it's like, oh, the burrow's open, you can
yes,
feed. The burrow's
yes.
closed, don't
Leave them
feed.
alone. Leave them
Yeah, they're
alone.
probably in primo. They're okay. And I know some people freak out when you can't see them. I know sometimes I kind of get like, oh, it's been a few months, are you okay? But
It's our babies.
then all of a sudden the burrow opens again and it's like,
Yeah,
oh.
it's
Or
there.
sometimes they kick out that molt and I'm like, oh, you got bigger.
Yeah,
So, and I
yeah.
find them much easier to rehouse too because I kind of like follow that tunnel that they go along and I just kind of cup the entrance, poke
Yes.
around that tunnel and come right out, and they're so easy.
Or sometimes they're in like their burrow, and you can just pull the burrow out altogether because it's so webbed tightly. You know, because like
Oh, that's a
I
good
just rehoused my
question.
Kilobrakis. Oh, How do you
That is a good
open?
question. So the way that you would do that without messing it up is, of course, if you know that you first, research that it is a heavy webbing species.
Yes.
And once you know that they will heavy web, you provide anchor points.
Yes.
And that's anything from like plants or decorations or anything like that. And they would
Yeah.
utilize that more. If you don't give them anchor points, if you don't give them that, then yeah, they'll start webbing the entire lid, and you will mess it up, and it
Yeah.
will cause the tarantula some stress. So if
Yes.
you do have a heavy webbing species and you see that they do that, please provide them anchor points and sticks. They'll even utilize sticks and leaf litter too.
You know.
I see them do curtains with it.
Mhm.
And once you provide all those necessary anchor points, that they will just pretty much like make that into a hammock, or even make like intricate little tunnels. Then you don't
Mhm.
have to worry so much about when you open that lid, you're gonna tear the whole thing apart.
Right. Yeah, like sriracha, hers is like a tunnel, so when I take the lid off, it doesn't come with it. It's because
Hmm.
she has a plant in there that it's webbed with the plant, so now it's
Yeah.
just like I can take the lid off and choo choo spray her. But I think, that makes a great point. And I think that's probably why my golden blue lily baboon is probably a little atrocious, because I think I could give her a plant in there, give her a little bit more coverage, and maybe she'd probably feel a little bit more secure. So I'm definitely going to take that in consideration next time I rehouse her,
Yeah.
because I think
Yeah,
that
most
might, because
definitely.
like hers is, she's got her burrow, and I did have a plant in there, but it died. So now it's just kind of like open, but she still has like those heights up. I don't know. I think she's just crazy, but I also think she's a male too. I think she's gonna mature out to be a boy, and I think I have noticed that the boys are a little bit more defensive. Have you noticed that?
I have noticed that a lot of the times the ones that do end up being males are the ones that wonder about more.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Because I know that I have some Formicticus species and Pamphibetuses that it doesn't matter, girl or boy, they will be temperamental to me.
Hmm.
But I've noticed that the ones that are most likely to be males are the ones that like to wonder about a bit
Yeah,
much.
yeah,
And
yeah,
my most likely to be females are more burrowing. And I say most likely because sometimes that's not always the case.
yeah.
So,
That's so true. Yeah. Oh, hi, Mom. My mom just commented. That's her beautiful sriracha.
oh, hi.
Hi, Mom. And I did want to answer Tarantula Tubbs' question of what's the best way to get a tarantula safely in your hand. So before you guys ever even think about handling your tarantula, make sure you test the temperament with a stick, a straw, or a paintbrush. And what I mean by this is you open up the enclosure and you're going to touch like the back leg of your tarantula. If they bite, they're either hungry and you should definitely leave them alone. Um, but also, if they don't bite consecutively like 3 times in a row, then I
They
would
could
say like
bolt.
they could bolt. Yeah. But make sure you're texting the temperament of that species, of that specific tarantula, to see if they're going to bite first or if they're going to run away. If they run away, then you could go ahead and handle them. Like I said, they're not going to enjoy it. Some will tolerate it more than others, and that's where that Aphonopelma chalcodii species is, a good one to handle. But also, like Liz said, they could be, totally different one day. So it really depends, like that day, testing the tarantula, seeing if they're gonna bite, seeing if they're gonna throw a defensive posture. Like my Phonoplema chalcodis is the only one, my only adult that I handle, and the way I get her out is I touch her back leg with a paintbrush, see if she's gonna react to it or not. Usually she doesn't. Usually she runs away, and then I kind of guide her onto my hand, and then Liz has even handled her as well. She was still a little bit skittish, but she didn't bite. Um, but they could still
Yeah.
bite because
Yeah.
even if they're in your hand and they don't feel stable, they can anchor their fangs into your skin, and that's how they're gonna hold on. So that's not gonna be super, um, you know, great for you. That's probably gonna either scare you or hurt pretty bad because their fangs are huge. But I mean, that's just the best way to do it. Test their temperament, see if they're gonna bite or not, and then get them onto your hand. But I only hold that specific tarantula. I can rely on her to at least be consistent of not biting me,
Yeah,
you know?
and that and you're totally right about that. Yeah, so like if you poke them and you don't get a reaction and they kind of just gently walk, like take a step forward and they're not you don't get much of a reaction at all, then
Right.
yeah, you could attempt handling. Um, but remember too, handling is more for your enjoyment.
Yeah, and it's always at your own risk.
Always at
Always.
your own risk, and always
Yep.
do it like I said in a seated position or on
On
the
the
floor.
floor. Yeah.
So, because anything can happen there, still 100% unpredictable. So, the Ophthalmopelma codes is a good candidate for handling, but also like your Grammostola rosea, the Chilean rose hair is also one.
Hmm.
I've also heard people say Grammostola pulchris, the Brazilian blacks. My Brazilian black I will never handle him. He
No.
is not, he is not with that. He don't care.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel like
Everything
that
is
with mine.
food.
Yeah, I
Or
feel like.
but it is impressive when I do see people have a very calm, docile like Asian Nicolata. I'm like, wow, because mine are not.
No,
They're not that
mine
docile.
are crazy. Mine's
Everything is
crazy.
food.
Uh-huh.
Everything is food.
They think everything is food, and if it's not, it's scary. They run.
Yeah, with hairs
Yeah,
coming
they're kicking
flying
hairs as
behind.
they're going. Hi, little present.
Yeah,
And those.
that's another thing to consider. Don't mess around and find out with urticating hairs.
Uh-uh.
Urticating hairs can be very itching. They can make those fly at any time. So, especially when I do my Theraphosa care, I know it sounds like overkill, but I mask up. I put on
Nope.
gloves. I
It's
put on goggles because
that's
nope.
appropriate. I feel like that's so appropriate, dude. Because yeah, and you know, like all of these urticating hairs, they all are different. Like they have different levels of like how bad they are depending on the species. So
Yes,
like your Theraphosos are horrible.
the
Like
worst.
they're so itchy. They'll make a rash. I mean, like, and it takes days for it to get out. So
Weeks.
masking up, putting on the goggles, putting on the face mask, do it because like I tell you guys, my little brachypelma hairs me all the time, and I get so itchy. I'm just like, oh, I'll be sitting here getting ready to feed, and I'll open up her enclosure, and I'm like, wow, my forehead's starting to itch, and she hasn't even done anything. She's haired me so many times, and I'm super sensitive now. And it doesn't matter how many times you get haired, you're not gonna get used to it. It's only gonna get worse.
Yep,
And the
I've seen people blister up and they're suffering from it for weeks and weeks and weeks. And so yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah,
know like with arboreal species, they do have urticating hair, but they don't really fly them out like how your terrestrials would. They
they're
pretty
really
much
hard for them to flick.
they really actually rub those hairs. You know, they rub them on their webbing, they rub it, you know, and that's how they pretty
Oh
much get
yeah.
those hairs out. They don't really flick them.
Yeah, and
So
talk about how like especially the Theraphosa species, they will lay down an entire urticating hair mat to when they go to
molt.
molt, they'll lay down a mat of urticating hairs around them so that if anything comes to disturb them while they're molting, they're gonna get those hairs. Like, and I mean, it feels like it like you could just be in the vicinity of that tarantula. You could just open the lid and you can get the reactions of those urticating hairs. And that's something super to consider, you guys, especially when you keep other pets in your home. Because I'm going to say this, my dogs have both been victims to urticating hairs on my tarantulas. And I
Poor
do my
baby.
best. I know. And I do my best to keep them separate. Like, I do not, I mean, my dogs do come in here, but I keep it very clean in here. But it doesn't matter. If there's an urticating hair floating around in your house, your dogs might get really puffy eyes or really puffy face, and the only thing you're going to be able to do for them is give them some doggy Benadryl without Sudafed in it, you know? That's what I did for my dogs because I woke up because my dogs had never gotten a puffy face ever until I brought my first two tarantulas I bought, and I had them out my living room, and this is why compacted everything into one room, and before it was just my closet, so I could just completely eliminate, that mix. Because that first week that I had those tarantulas, I woke up and my husky's face was puffy and I was crying because I was like, oh my god, what's wrong with you? What happened? What'd you eat? Are you having an allergic reaction? What's going on? And God bless my mom, because she took our dogs to the vet a lot when we were kids. So she's like a vet. She could tell you what to do. And she was like, go get some doggy Benadryl. I mean, it's not doggy Benadryl, it's people Benadryl without the Sudafed. And I also, my Chihuahua, her face got messed up too, but I wasn't able to give her Sudafed. So what I did, because she's too small for that to be taking medicine like that. So what I did was I took a Lucicil spray, it's antiseptic spray for animals, and I could literally spray. I just sprayed her eye and I wiped it, and she was fine within a couple days. And I
That's
also took like
good.
a warm patch, but and you guys, there's no way to get the urticating hairs out unless they literally come out by
It's
themselves.
exactly. It's like similar to like a splinter because they're like tiny harpoons. Something
Yes.
that I did see that Arachnid Cat did say that there are species of New Worlds that don't have urticating hairs. That is true.
Yes.
Simulpaeus species don't have them.
That's
And I know
facts.
the D. diantomensis, which is like your I am not
Brazil.
good with common names, but
I know.
it's basically like the dwarf GBB is like what everybody likes to call them. Yeah, they
Yes.
don't have urticating hairs.
Yeah, they're
Mine threatened
gorgeous.
me. Mine threatened me until the day he died. Okay.
I think tarantula cats is the same. Her D dimensionensis is the same. She's a little man eater.
Yeah. So, and that also comes with, like how I said, when you guys do your research and you guys start educating yourselves on your animals, yeah, also learn like what type of urticating hairs do they have.
Yes. Yeah, and
Um,
Google, if you guys Google that, it'll tell you. Like, I know,
and
like, Google's like using the AI now, so like it's definitely
I
more updated
know.
than it used to be.
And also know too, like even though like temperaments and attitudes and stuff like that can be different. I don't know if some of you have noticed, but like when your males mature out, their embolize don't look the same. Or when you're sexing your female and you're looking to see if if they have that epigastric furrow, they all those little flaps don't always look the same. Some of them are more round, some of them have like that little bump and stuff like that. So just learn that too, that they're not all going to look the same all the time. Some of them are more prominent than others, or some males have like their tibial hooks will be more like larger than the others.
Yeah, or
So
they won't have tibial hooks, like Pokies, the
yeah.
Poecilotheria, or dang, I was gonna mention something else that's really good, but I totally forgot about it. I have like a freaking short-term memory span, man.
No, it's okay. And then I saw another person say about their T apophysis. Yeah, dude, mine, huh, it doesn't matter. He could retreat to his burrow and I will still get greeted with urticating hairs.
Oh
He's
yeah.
he's literally the last one I check out of everybody. He is number 80. I will check very last because
Yeah.
he will greet me with a cloud of hairs no matter what.
That's my GBB. She's always kicking hairs at me. I'm like, girl, we always gonna be doing this, aren't we? She's like, yeah.
And it takes me hours to feed because I can't just throw
No.
a feeder and water and then just put them back. I have to observe. I have to know
Yeah.
what they're doing. I have to
What's
know.
going on?
Yeah, I have to check on them if they're good, if they're gonna molt, if they're not. And it's funny because like I have all my slings molt at the same time, and then like my
Yes, mine too.
juveniles molt at the same time. It's like they all have like the same but also separate molt cycles. Another thing too, guys, like if you follow each other on social media and stuff like that, if you
I,
see like a bunch of people that they have like, for example, their Chilo Brockies, like you see that everybody's just like, oh, it's freshly malted, but yours isn't. It's coming. It's so
oh yeah.
weird because it's like with certain species, if you see like it's almost like they have like the same molt cycle almost.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So
Mine are always making me so surprised because like one will molt and then The next day I'll go back in there and there's more of that molten, and I'm just like, you guys just all signed a paper today or sometime this week and said we're gonna molt.
The ones
But
that surprise me are my adult females because I never know. Some of them take like
no,
Grandma Rosea. The last time she molted was like 2 years ago, and
let
so
me ask you
those.
this. Let me ask you a
Mhm.
question. Because I've noticed personally, I noticed the males grow or molt more frequently than the females. What do you think about that?
Yes, they do mature out a lot quicker. They do
Okay, yeah,
mature out a
because
lot quicker.
and I also because I got my Tilcatl Callenbergi behind me, and she's been growing. I mean, at first she was growing quick, and then like she's got reached the size she is now, and it's just so slow, so
Mhm.
slow. Same with my curly hair, and a few of my other spiders, but I've definitely noticed that as well.
I noticed like with my Brachypelmas and my Titocotyls especially, because I do have a bunch of those. I noticed that like during the very small sling stage, yeah, it takes forever in between, and then suddenly they go through like this growth spurt when they hit that juvenile size, and it
Right.
almost feels like it's like every 12 weeks or something
Yes.
like that. Like
Yeah.
they just frequently molt, and then as they gain size, then it kind of slows back down again. So that is
Right.
perfectly normal to happen too,
Right.
for those that are like, oh, I used to molt like so often, and then it's kind of not. But then if it keeps going that way, then yeah, most likely you're gonna have one that's gonna mature out male pretty
Yeah.
fast.
Yeah. Yeah. For
So
sure.
yeah, that is something that does happen.
Yeah.
Other than like females, depending, right? Because like there are some females that mature out and they live for 8 years or 12 years. Especially like your arboreals, they don't really live that long. Not like some of your terrestrials that they can do that 20-year, 30-year lifespan. Also, another thing too to consider when you're keeping, especially some of you that are new to keeping, always know that things can happen.
Yeah.
Loss does happen. Don't beat yourself up too hard. You know,
It happens
um,
randomly. It
yeah,
happens randomly.
because your care could be A1 and things can still happen. Especially like if they're at that sling stage and they're more fragile, you accidentally let it dry up too much, they'll die. I've had some that pass away at a subadult age. Because if you really think about it, when you think about an egg sac of 100, 200 babies, they're all not genetically meant to make it, like
No.
not naturally. So
Facts.
you could end up having one that's just not, it's just not that strong, and it's
Right.
not always your fault. And it
Right.
does suck, especially when you put that much effort and care into making sure that they thrive and they grow, and then they die.
Yeah.
Just always make sure that it wasn't you or something that could be done better. But just also know too that maybe it just wasn't meant to be, and that's okay.
Right. And that's
And
really great. That's really great to talk about because there's a lot of people that get slings and the sling dies. Pardon me, I had a cough. The sling dies, and then they're totally turned off to the idea of keeping in general. So that's really good to tell people that, if that happens to them, to just keep trying and maybe try a different hardier species like your Aphonopelmas, your Brachypelmas, or your Chilobrachys,
hmm
your
yeah,
ABC
because
tarantulas.
yeah, for sure. But I mean, yeah, hardier species are a bit more reliable until you get more experience into keeping slings. I've had a lot of success raising out slings, and water is such an important thing for
Yes.
tarantula, if even for your more drier species. um, Always offer water. Always offer
Yes.
water. Water is so important, not only to keep up with their hemoglobin in there, in their bodies to keep body function and be able to move, but also for in between molt cycles, because they do produce a fluid in between their old exoskeleton and their new exoskeleton. And if you keep them dry and you don't offer them a lot of water, they're not going to be able to make it out of that molt okay. And that's also another reason why like bad molts happen too.
Yeah, and you also
So
don't want to keep it super damp to the point where it's like got a puddle in the enclosure
yeah,
too.
no, not soggy, damp. And another
Yeah.
thing to you guys, like, you know, humidity, you have to think like, oh, I poured in water and the water went all the way to the bottom. That's okay, because
Yeah.
when it's drying out, you know, that humidity goes up.
Yeah, it
It
creates a gradient.
evaporates and it goes up. Yeah. So
Yeah.
you'll be okay.
Right.
So, and also, you know, when you have those humidity dependent species, please add springtails. Springtails will always be your friend, not only to
Hmm.
kill off like any oncoming mold or anything like that, but when tarantulas eat, they don't eat their entire prey, right? They
Right.
only eat whatever is nutritious,
Mhm.
and whatever is left over, they will also take care of that bolus, that little leftover crusty ball thing that they love to leave behind. And so,
So gross.
and
I
so,
find them all the time, just little
yeah.
balls of food wrapped up. I'm like, that's disgusting.
You know, the way that they eat is pretty gross anyways. Like they puke on it. Like, you know, they puke those so okay, so let's talk about this for 2 seconds. Because a lot of people think that tarantula venom is mainly meant for killing them, and actually no, a lot of their venom is meant for like paralyzing them, just making sure that their prey is not going to keep trying to go away from them. And they munch, right? But internally in that mouth part, they actually throw up those digestive enzymes that break it down, and then they slurp it back up.
That's so nasty. That's like us chewing up our food, spitting it out, and slurping it back up. That's
So
disgusting.
whatever is not nutritious for them, it's gonna end up being a bolus. That's what we normally call it,
Yes.
the leftovers, because they do when they do their happy dance, right? Their happy dance when they
Hmm.
set the food down, they're
Yeah.
essentially just wrapping up that prey to into like a ball, and they just kind of mush it all up together and slurp it, throw
It's
up on it and slurp
disgusting.
it.
Yeah.
And then whatever is not nutritional for them, that leftover, because they ball it up into a web, that is their bolus. That's the leftover. That's
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
trashed.
Yeah. And then
And
they like throw it out of their burrow.
you
And
know,
they
I have, okay, for me, there's two different kinds, right? There's one that will always put all their boluses in one corner, and then
hmm
there's some that they don't care. They will drop that bolus wherever they
Yeah.
were just eating, and they would just drop
Yeah.
it right there. And I'm
Yeah.
like, gross. Thanks for letting me find that. But I love my humidity dependent species because those springtails take care of it. They take care
Oh,
of it.
yeah.
They break it down, they eat it. I don't have to pick it out. It's pretty
But don't
cool.
put isopods in your tarantulas enclosures. They will eat your
No,
tarantulas.
I've
I
seen
actually,
people do that, and I'm like, you know,
girl.
I've heard
Mhm.
people say that they leave the tarantula alone during molt, but then at the same time, I think it kind of stresses them out because they're constantly, you know, they're
Yeah,
bigger. They're bigger than a
isopods.
springtail.
I'm. I always. I. The crazy thing too is like isopods like protein rich food. So like I feed mine like a lot of crickets. Like I'll just like kill a cricket and drop it in there and leave it for them. I need to get isopod food, but that's not how I've been feeding mine. And I've been
I
leaving
know,
little
like
protein rich.
when like for also a source of calcium for my isopods, I give them my eggshells.
Yeah, yeah. Or I've even been told give them your toenail clippings.
I seen
Gross.
that. I seen
Yeah.
him do that. I was like, I
No
was
way.
surprised. I was surprised. I was like, it really did munch
Sick.
on that. I was
Yeah,
like, good.
they'll munch on anything. Anything they can get some nutrition out of. But and you guys for your slings too, you don't always have to just feed them uh fruit flies or um pinhead. I mean, like I would recommend always like crickets are always a good option for feeders, but because I personally hate fruit flies because dealing with them like when you open up that lid to get your fruit fly out, tons of them come out. So like I even if like you put them in the refrigerator, like I still hate that. So I so for me, when I got my slings, I didn't want to deal with those fruit flies. So I reached out to Tom Saxon at Fangs TV and I asked him, I said, you know, if I leave a little pre-killed prey cricket in there, will they feed off of it? And he said, yeah, if you guys just
Yes,
leave a little pre-killed cricket in there, they'll scavenge off it, eat whatever they need, and then leave the rest. And then you just pull
yes,
that
yes.
the rest of it out the next day.
Yes, yes. I agree with the fruit flies. Fruit flies
Yeah.
are a pain. I don't like them either. They're not a favorite of mine. I know a lot of people like them. I don't. But I know like when I was raising up some of my dwarves, when they're slings, those things are like a half size of a grain of rice. They're super tiny. But yeah,
Tiny.
pre-killed crickets is a way to go because when they are that small, they scavenge and you know
Yeah.
they really do scavenge all of that. So
Yeah, they're not trying to hunt.
and then as they get older, yeah, they'll take prey down. But sometimes I sometimes I even leave just like a cricket leg. I'll be
Yeah,
like, here,
yeah.
there's
Or
a
like
like,
half the cricket.
and I'll be
Yeah,
like,
me
here's a little
too, dude.
drumstick for you.
Yeah, dude, they are like little drumsticks. I
I know a lot of keepers in the hobby kind of compare them to that. Like crickets are your chickens, and then roaches are like steak, and then your
yeah,
hornworms is like a watermelon because they're
yeah,
juicy and they're full of water.
yeah. And I did want to touch on what Arachnid Cat just commented here. Gut loading. Make sure you don't feed them
Yes,
tomatoes, because yeah, that is bad for the tarantulas.
yes.
Good ways to gut load your crickets. Cricket calcium, they sell it at the store, and you can also give them little bits of lettuce at a time. I
Hmm.
don't advise you give them tons of lettuce at once, because they'll eat until they die. Like literally, they'll eat so much and then they'll just die. Like I've had that happen. Um,
Yes, wet potato slices is good too. That is also a good because a lot of cricket, you know, factories and things like that,
oh
or
yeah,
whatever you want to
always
call it,
put the potatoes in
they
there.
always put potatoes too. I know like when I keep my crickets in a bin, I personally don't put substrate in there with them because they
Hmm.
eat the substrate.
I'm
And then
sure.
and then like when I go and grab them and I squeeze them a little bit too hard sometimes, then they're like loaded with dirt. And then they're like it's like brown stuff coming out of their butt. And I'm like, ew, I don't
Oh
feed
my
that to them.
gosh,
It's like,
I
oh,
didn't
you
even think
know,
about that. I didn't even think about that.
dirt filled cricket.
Yeah,
So
they'll eat anything.
but
They're scavengers.
I do leave like egg carton in there so that way it keeps them separate and you know but yeah
Yeah,
leafy greens and potato slices, carrots is good too. I seen them go for the
yep.
carrots.
Yeah, they like the
um
carrots.
yeah, I know my one lonely roach, poor thing, I have to get it a friend. I would like to restart my colony at some point. My colony failed.
Yeah, so
um
let me ask you this. So when you're feeding your tarantulas, you give them a variety diet too.
I
And what do you think
do.
that does for the tarantulas? Just for those that are, getting into the hobby, and the importance of variety for the meals for these guys is important, I feel like.
Yes. Um, I kind of imagine it like if you yourself, can you eat the same meal every day?
No,
Can you eat the
I would
same
hate
meal all
that.
the time?
No.
So, I mean, like my go-to feeder is and will always be crickets. But yeah, every once in a while I do switch it up for them because it does give a different feeding response, most definitely.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
every time I throw in a hornworm, or for those that follow tarantula cat very closely, gummy worms,
Yes,
right?
yes, the gummy worm.
They don't really pounce on them, you know, like how they would with a cricket because they're constantly moving.
Yeah, they're
But
loud.
yeah, and or like with my roaches, I do crush the heads because they like to
Mhm.
burrow. I hate
Yeah,
that.
I hate
And
that.
so I crush the heads and I leave it there and they're just kind of wiggling their legs like that. And it gives a different response. I think it gives them like something different to be like, oh, what is that? Like it's prey, but what
Yeah,
is that? You know?
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, it is good to change it up because I do feel like they shouldn't eat the same thing all the time for the rest of their lives, you
Right,
know?
because different bugs provide different nutrients, and
Exactly. I personally love to offer my tarantulas hornworms when they're ready to eat after a molt,
yeah, yeah,
because it kind of you know puts that hydration back in them because it does take a lot out of them to molt. And they
Hmm.
do lose a lot of that fluid because, like I said, they have to have that fluid between their old exoskeleton and their new exoskeleton when they molt out, and they lose a lot of that. That's why you see a lot of them munch on
Their
their old
molts.
mold afterwards because they're just trying to, you
Get some
know,
moisture and
replenish themselves
nutrition.
again. Yeah. So it's always good to offer them water too. And also another thing, touching on that, right? Like when saying like when they're ready to eat, always know that the bigger they are, the longer it takes for them to harden. So like
Hmm.
I have slings or smaller species that they can eat on day 5 after
Yeah.
molting. But then, like, for example, my Theraphosas, since they're now getting bigger, it takes them 3 weeks, almost a month sometimes, for them
Yeah.
to fully harden up. And
Yeah.
I can't offer them anything. And
No.
just know that they're very soft and they're very delicate and they're very vulnerable. So please be very mindful when you're going to go offer them food after they're freshly molted that they are absolutely ready to take that prey because they can
Yeah.
hurt themselves.
Right. And you guys can, you got ways to do that is you guys can check their fangs, especially because when they're freshly molted, their fangs will be really red or pink. And once that goes away, they harden up and they turn black. That's a really good time to feed them.
Yes.
But yeah, I generally give like my slings that are like less than an inch. A week is fine, or even
Mhm.
maybe 5 days. I've even because like they're so small, they harden up really quick. So I'm
Yeah.
always checking, and then like the bigger ones for sure, it can take a whole month, and you don't want to be
Yeah.
feeding them while they're still fragile like that. So checking the fangs, and you can also tell the difference from when they're freshly molted because they're really shiny and gooey
The
looking,
gummy. Yeah.
gummy, and then they'll harden up and
But
they're
most
they're
but most of the time, a week, 2 weeks, they're normally pretty ready. And sometimes they'll let you know too. Like sometimes I may think, oh, they're not ready yet. But then when I go and I'm like spraying water, they're attacking the water, and I'm like, oh, you're
right,
ready. I'm like, oh,
right,
you're
right,
ready. I'm gonna go ahead and throw in a prey then for you,
right.
and
Or if
they'll
they
eat.
were if they were hiding before and now they're
And they're
out,
out. Yeah.
then they're ready to eat. That's a good sign too. Because
They're
like
good looking.
I have my Selvapeus Arminia, Khaleesi, my Venezuelan sun tiger. She's interested, and she's interesting because she will disappear for weeks, especially like right before she molts and right after she molts. So like in that time, sometimes like her no, her burrow is always webbed if she's like not ready to come out. But that's like a good sign. Her burrow is webbed over. She's not hanging out. She'll disappear for weeks, and then when she's ready, all of a sudden I'll come in here and she's hanging out. She'll literally disappear for weeks, and I'll be like, "Oh, she's gone. Are you still alive in there?" I'm shining my light in
Yeah.
there, makes sure she's not balled up for some reason. But yeah, they
Yeah.
can definitely
Every
disappear.
Yeah, every few months I do what is called a wellness check. So
Yes.
meaning if they've been burrowed down and I haven't seen it,
Uh huh.
I'm gonna mess with you and see if you're okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, me
but normally
too.
no, I leave them alone. If I can tell and I can see that they're doing fine and they're thriving and we're good, we're not dead, we're not.
Yeah,
But it is good to always check up on them and see if they're
yeah,
doing okay.
yeah. Because I
So
had my first tarantula, Freddy. He was a Bonatina Minax, which is the Mexican copperhead tarantula, and
pretty.
he was a pretty boy. I got him from Petco. I bought him from Petco, and because I just couldn't stand, sometimes you're in the store, you just can't help but take one home, because you just can't help but feel bad for the tarantulas at those chain pet stores. But I took him home, and for the first 2 months, and this is how you can tell when a tarantula's been really stressed out. He literally hid for like the first 2 to 3 months that I owned him. Like he was out, and then all of a sudden he was gone, and I was like, "Are you dead?" And he was my first tarantula. I was really scared that he was like dead or something. So I went in there, I dug in there, but I didn't ruin his burrow. I just dug up enough so I could see like he's still moving. And then I just, kind of put it back a little bit, and he was fine. He still continued to hide under there for the remaining month or so, and then he finally came out, and then he was
Yeah,
out all the time.
Yeah, reading your tarantula's body language and what they're doing really does say a lot, you know, like especially if they're not liking something, like if they're not trying to, like if you know it's a burrowing species, and it's fine that a burrowing species doesn't hardly ever use their burrow and they stay out, but if you kind of see
Right.
them like up against the glass, they kind of have their knees over their carapace and they look very hunkered over and just stressed,
Yeah.
something's not right,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Or like their space is too big. You know,
Hmm.
let's talk about that real quick because like, there's a lot of people saying that you can put a baby sling in a full adult enclosure, and I want to know what you think about that.
No.
I feel the same way. No, because it's
uh,
just it's not the same. These are captive bred species.
exactly. They need to be able to find that prey, especially if you're
Yeah.
giving them live prey and they're a sling, but they're a sling that doesn't need necessarily pre-kill. But you want them to find that prey. If you give them an enclosure that is far too big, they're not going to find that.
Right.
And to be honest, I pretty much go by that rule of like go by 3 to 4 times their size,
Mhm. Mhm.
because you
That's
also
what
want
I
to
do.
give them enough space to molt, because always know that, especially if it's a growing on species, spider that you have that is still growing up, it will need that extra little space to grow.
Right.
And
And
but
and
even
security.
yeah, and I've seen people too where they give their adult tarantula a massive setup and they only use just a corner of it.
Right, because they're opportunistic species. They're not a
They're not.
lizard. They're not a reptile that needs exercise. Like, they're like my snake. Every night he comes out and he does his runs through his enclosure. My tarantulas are not doing that. Besides the boys, of course. My mature
Hmm.
boys that are
Looking
looking
for
for a lady.
females.
But
Yeah.
other than that, they're not doing much. I mean, most of these girls are doing nothing all day. I mean, Alfredo, my AVEC, has literally sat in the same spot for 3 days straight. So
I
yeah,
know, right?
I was like, girl, what are you doing?
Conserving energy.
She was. She's like, I need my beauty sleep.
But yeah, just give your tarantula an appropriate size. And the best enclosure is depending on how you set them up and how they're meant to be set up is the
Yeah,
right enclosure.
yeah, and that's where
I,
doing your research really comes into play. Before
mm-hmm,
you buy that spider, know what species, know where it's coming from. If it's New World,
mm-hmm.
Old World, if it's got urticating hairs, if it doesn't, how medically significant its venom is. It's all very important because these are spiders. These are big, giant spiders that are, where we live in America, from everything that Hollywood's produced and portrayed spiders as, they don't have a good reputation. And that's why we're
No, they
here. We're
don't. And
here to
it's
advocate for them.
Yeah, yeah, they definitely don't come out and attack. But also, keep in mind too, like, like where we live is very dry. We're in high altitude. The way that we would keep our spiders is probably not the same way as somebody that lives in California, Florida, or
No.
any other places that are a little bit more hot and humid kind of place.
Hmm.
So, um, like I have to water twice a week because it gets dry. But and I'm
Me too.
pretty sure like
I'm
pretty sure
watering
like
twice a week.
dude,
It's
the
so
time that
much.
it takes. But yeah, it just depends on where they're at in your house too. Like I noticed that some of my enclosures that are in the higher part of the shelves holds more humidity than
Hmm.
some of the ones that are on the bottom. They kind
And
of dry
heat.
out a bit more easier, yeah.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
just keep that in mind too, like when you're taking advice from other people, always just know
Consider
like
your
like where
own.
where do you live, you know? So
Oh, we do have the Dubia does sponsor Tarantula Cat for bugs,
yeah,
Chris.
yeah,
Just so
that's
you know.
dubious.
But
Not Dubai, dubious.
not Dubai. Dubia roaches. They don't sell
Yeah.
crickets though. That I wish they did sell crickets because there are people that that live really remote, only have chain pet stores. They don't have scales and tails like we do. We're very
Yeah.
spoiled. Scales and tails, if you guys have one in your area, I highly suggest you guys go shop with them, buy their feeders, buy their animals. Me and Liz are
Yeah.
customers of them, and we've gotten
And
a
and
lot of
and,
ours.
and even if you don't have a scales and tails, I would prefer that you guys would go to like a local reptile shop to get your feeders than to go
Yeah,
to PetSmart or Petco. Like no diss to
those
them.
those feeders will
Um,
kill your pets. I'm
you
serious.
don't know where those feeders have been.
Yeah,
But know that like if you go to like your local reptile place and all that, the local reptile shop, they're more reputable. They know where they're getting their stuff from, and they know how to keep the feeders well. You know, they feed them good and they
yeah,
properly keep them alive for you as you go
right.
and you buy them.
Hmm.
So I don't know if
Yeah,
you
and they're
guys have seen
clean.
that like in Petco or in PetSmart. I know I have. Like I seen like their cricket bin. It's like
Oh, their
um
crickets smell. They smell bad. They
it's
smell bad and they
disgusting.
cost way more than if you were to go to a reptile shop. Because
Yeah.
I pay $5 at most for 50 large and 50 small. But when I went to PetSmart to get like 100 of each, it was $40. I was like, I'm never coming here again. And also, because I hear, I have friends that bought feeders from Petco and they fed it to their jumping spider and their jumping spider died. So it's just like, I would not recommend you guys buy your feeders from there because you're going to end up with a dead animal. And
I had I had somebody tell me once, and this is what kind of I was like, ew. They got their feeders from like Petco, PetSmart, and they noticed that like around the chelicerae, there's like
yeah,
little mites, and I'm like, I don't know if I
yeah,
could do
that's from dirty crickets. And then
so.
personally, once you get mites, it's so hard to get rid of.
It's so hard. But not all
Yeah,
mites are bad,
right.
okay? So
I do see
like it
some in my enclosures that are
yeah,
not
yeah, like
harmful.
sometimes you have like wood mites or like mites from like, your substrate being too wet and stuff like that. That they're not that harmful. You can just let that dry out and it kind of take care of itself. Or if you just add some springtails, the springtails kind of like overpower them, from reproducing so much. But
Yeah,
yeah, but like mites that kind of stay stuck on your animal is not it's not
yeah,
ideal.
no, you don't want those ones.
So,
It does not end well. We know this.
do not get wild caught because some of them can
No.
come those too. So
Yeah, and I do want to touch on the wild caught versus captive bred, and what you think about that. Because there are people, I mean, because here's the thing, there is like a certain extent, like wild caught, we do need some wild caught specimens because we don't already have them in the hobby, and we're trying to get them into the hobby and make them more available to people in the hobby versus somebody going out, plucking a wild tarantula out of the wild and putting them on their table to sell, you know?
um So my thoughts on wild caught is, I mean, for the purpose of like, reproducing them in the hobby is perfectly fine. What I don't think is okay is when people go out their way and they're just pretty much poaching them out of their natural habitat, and you're pretty
Right.
much damaging their population already.
Right.
You
Right,
know,
because like we said, it's really hard for them to live in the wild as it is, and just
as it
that
is.
extra factor, we're not
Hmm.
even supposed to be a factor of that of
Hmm.
the ecosystem in that way. So it is very damaging to take a female that produces hundreds of eggs out of the
Yeah.
wild, and she's no longer there available
and
to keep
and
repopulating.
and I know that here in Colorado, when we have that migration, it does suck when I hear that people take males and they keep them, and I'm like, that male could have met a female, and that could have been 100 more
Right.
into the population, and how damaging it could be to just take one just
Yeah.
for
Just
yourself.
one. Right.
I would say leave it up to the breeders, leave it up to the people that know what they're doing and that they're going to benefit to the hobby instead of damaging the natural where they're at in nature.
Right. Like
Um,
micro wilderness. Micro
yeah,
wilderness.
yeah.
He
Yo,
he
Nate is so great with that. Yeah.
because he
He
produces
releases.
the. Yeah, do you
Go
want to talk
ahead.
about it? You can go ahead.
No, yeah, yeah, I respect Nate for that very much. Like he goes and releases half of them back into the wild and all that. It's really good that he goes out there and he knows like where they're at, where they kind of roam around, and he kind of puts them right back there, you
Yeah.
know.
Oh yeah. Right back into their native spot.
And then the
And he
other
knows
half
that
will,
area so well because he's always out there on his like ATV and stuff looking for wild animals. So
yeah, yeah,
I do I do support that stuff to the
hmm
highest degree for sure.
But if you are a person that just wants to experience a tarantula in the wild and you're just looking for them, um, just know every rock you flip it back,
Yeah.
even if you don't find any.
Yeah.
Do not keep them for yourself. The risk also of taking a wild caught, not only just messing up the population in nature, but you don't know what that one wild caught species is going through. You don't know if they have some kind of internal parasite. You don't know if they have any kind of sickness that could pretty much spread to your other animals. That is a huge risk to take. Um, Always try to get captive bred species only. It's just better that way for all of us.
Sorry,
So
Liz. I popped out. I accidentally exited out. My bad.
I
My
got
bad,
scared
you
for two
guys.
seconds. I'm like, I'm by myself.
I'm here. I'm here. But what's one last thing that you would like to talk about before we end the episode today? What is there anything you would like to ask me or anything you would like to talk about in specificity?
um, Tarantula keeping should always be fun.
Yeah.
It should always be an enjoyable thing. Once it starts feeling like it's not fun, um, just kind of reevaluate yourself. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
maybe you
like
have too many, or you know, if you're not finding the joy in them anymore, then yeah, there's something wrong. But tarantula keeping should always be fun, and keep the ones that you like, that you know that you're gonna like.
mhm.
Don't go for what's always popular at the moment, or what's, trending right now. Because it may be one that you're not gonna really enjoy keeping so much. So keep
Right.
the ones that you really like, that you did your research and you're like, I like that one. I want to keep that one. So keep the ones that you really like.
Yeah.
So, and always do your research. It doesn't matter if it's keeping a brand new species or if you're taking a dip in breeding. Do your research,
Mhm.
because I know that there's some species that you have to mimic breeding season.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing with my own pokies right now. Yeah, I have to miss down my Poecilotheria diamond like every other day now because I'm mimicking her breeding season. I mean,
Yeah,
we're kind of chilling out now because we think that they paired. We're not exactly sure because I need to get a camera to put in there because these pokies are so reclusive and secretive with their mating
yeah.
rituals. So, but we think they paired. I mean, we still have time either way if she isn't fertile or whatever.
Yeah,
But I do.
best of luck though. Best of luck. I really hope there's an egg sac coming for
Me
you.
too. Me too. Thank you. This is my first project, and I plan on doing another breeding project here soon. But I think it's gonna be my darlingese next because my male just matured out.
No, I saw. So
Yeah.
handsome.
Yeah, he's
Mine is still
handsome.
so little.
I know they're awesome. But I
But
do want to go ahead.
is there are you only focusing on old worlds to breed, or are you
No.
gonna try to have a mix of a little bit of everything?
Yeah, so the collection that I have now are the species that I personally love. Like you said, I chose species that I really like, I'm really interested in, and I plan on breeding all of my tarantulas eventually at some point because I do want to have my own online shop. I do want to offer the community in-house captive bred species, just like, you know, Tom Saxon does. That's like my dream right there, is to be at that level and to just contribute to the hobby in that way. And any species that ever becomes endangered in the wild, especially, I can be a part of reintroducing them into the hobby and building up that species, you know. But I only did the old worlds first because that's what matured out first. And
Okay.
that's what I'm doing, is as my tarantulas mature out, because I don't have a microscope or anything to like check the flaps on their molts.
Hmm.
So I'm just waiting until they molt out. And I do have breeder friends that I do occasionally. They do help me sex my tarantulas, but that's just how I'm doing it as they grow up, because I am not going to breed any tarantula that I have not personally owned and kept myself, because I just think that's not the best way to go about it, because that's the fastest way to get turned off to something, especially because like right now these pokies are super hard to breed. And but I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful, but it's also not for the money. I'm not doing it for the money at all. It's only for the pure passion that I have for these tarantulas and how I want to contribute to them as a whole.
And that is so good to hear. And I believe in you. I know you can do
Thanks.
it. And I know
I got
that with
patience.
yeah. And I know the way you research, and yeah, you're gonna do really great with that. I know you
Thank
will.
you. Thank you,
Yeah.
Liz. Thank
Yeah.
you. Was there
Because
anything
breeding
else?
oh, sorry.
Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about?
Um, I think we covered a lot.
Yeah, we covered a lot. I just don't want to run over too long, just because I know you have to get to work and everything.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Being a fully employed person and taking care of like collectively almost 100 animals in my house. It's
Yes. Yes. That's a lot of work.
on the clock work, yeah, because I don't only have tarantulas.
Yes. We also keep reptiles too.
Yes, I have 6 geckos. I have 4 crested geckos and 2 gargoyle geckos. And I
Yes.
also keep other inverts too. I have like 5 different species of isopods. I have a scorpion, a tailless whip scorpion, and a vinegaroon.
Yes.
That thing
Yes.
is fun. It's
That
so
thing's so
weird
cool.
looking.
I know. Straight from Harry Potter.
And I
Straight
also have
up.
like other truer spiders too. So if anyone was wondering, I don't solely just keep tarantulas. So I do keep other inverts. I love inverts in general. They're just so cool.
Why is that? Why do you keep more than just tarantulas?
Because I feel like inverts in general, they live their lives very uniquely. They're just very different. And what people see as a insignificant pest, I don't. I see the beauty of them. I just love how they help the environment like naturally,
Hmm.
and I feel like they should get, they should have that acknowledgement and that respect as animals, because a lot of
Right.
people don't. They'd be like, oh, it's just a bug, and it's like it's not a bug. it's
Yeah.
it's more than that.
It's an
And
animal.
it
It's an
is an
animal that
animal.
lives for 30 years.
Hmm.
Some of them live for 30 years. The males live half the lifespan of a female, but that's a long time. I mean, flies don't even live that long. I mean, I can see somebody say that about a fly, but you know,
Yeah, no, I really do feel like every invert arthropod, they are important. They are
yeah, they
important,
are.
and they shouldn't be ignored. We should always continue to learn about them. I
Reptiles
feel
too.
like, yeah, I feel like a lot of misunderstood animals, even reptiles. I've seen a
Yes.
lot of hate for snakes. I've seen a lot of hate for, monitors and things like that. And a lot of it has to do with lack of education.
Yeah.
I have changed the minds of so many people by just simple education, simple fun facts.
Hmm.
And it's just very important to just get to know the animals that we share the earth with,
Right.
and
And to have
and
respect.
yeah, and have respect. Yes, that they matter. It's not just something like kill it with fire. Like, no, like just no.
Makes me
It's
sad. It makes me sick.
it is
There's
sad,
It is. You know, they have
but
feelings too. And, you know, the other thing is, like, we built our homes on top of their homes, so we can't not expect them to be there. It's just not,
exactly.
just a little
Yeah, they're
uncool to not think that.
to to me, they're all important. They're beautiful. Everyone should know about them.
Hmm.
I am eventually opening a YouTube channel myself just to educate not only on just spiders, but just all inverts that I keep and will continue to keep. I would like to expand my knowledge on everything. And so,
Yes.
and just keep a little and just share with other invert keepers too. Like eventually I want to keep beetles. I want to keep, I was a big mantis keeper at some point too.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, they all matter. They're super beautiful to me. They're all unique and special, and everyone should know about them. Everyone should have that experience with, an invert, and just
Hmm.
see like just how majestic they really are in their own way.
Right. Right. For sure. Well, this podcast episode has been so much fun. The last thing that I want to mention to you guys, especially in regards to tarantulas, reptiles, our community, the hobby in general, be kind to one another. Always, always offer help with an open hand. Always be open to other feedback from other keepers. There's not just one way to keep these animals. There's different ways that is all the same. So be kind to one another, help each other out, give advice, and be kind to someone for sure. And especially
Yes,
in this hobby, we do not
especially
tolerate
someone who's
meanies.
new.
Yeah,
Especially someone who's new. Don't turn them away and don't think, oh well, if they'd done basic, research, they should have known that. No, sometimes some people just don't get a clear answer online and they just rather ask somebody
exactly.
that is
That
experienced. I
knows.
know, yeah, I know like when I teach tarantula care classes at my friend's oddity shop, I always tell them no question is a stupid question for me.
Yeah,
It is my DMs are always as a safe space to ask anything. If I
yes,
know it, I'll tell you. If I don't know it, we'll research together, we'll learn together. We can
yeah.
all always benefit from each other and grow together and learn together.
Right, yes. And I have noticed, like, our own community, we even have made own group chats to support each other on our posts and
I
videos and our
love
reels
that.
that we made. And I love that. That's such like
Love that.
a joining of our community. So it's so awesome. But I'm gonna get you out of here, Liz. And I just wanted to thank every single one of you guys that tuned in for this episode today. And I cannot wait to keep making more podcast episodes. Um, Comment down below some guests that you guys would like to see in the future and some podcast episode ideas that you guys will also like to see. And with that said, thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys
Yes,
all have a
thank
blessed week.
you.
Bye, Liz. Thank you,
Bye.
Chris. And thank you so much for all the sponsors that sponsor the Untamed and Unhinged Reptile Network. Thank you guys so much. Have a
Yes.
blessed day.
Bye, guys.